Guys, what's going on? Welcome to Cereal at Midnight. My name is Heath, and I'm joined by Vanessa. Hey, Vanessa, how's it going?
Hey Heath, it's going well. Hey everyone.
So one of the reasons we wanted to do this is going to be an ongoing series for us. One of the reasons we wanted to do this is because we both love the classics. Maybe we can talk about what that means, but we both love older movies. You are a super fan of, pre-codes and silent film and stuff like that, but we'll also talk about some later stuff. We'll talk about you know the 50s and 60s classics and things like that as well, right? But it's like I notice that there's a huge awakening to this stuff. What do you think?
I think there is. And I don't want to, before we get started, I don't want to put like a fence around the term classic film where it's only films from the 20s to the 50s. I think in this modern age, I think classic film could mean anything really. I hear people now talking about films from the 80s and 90s as being classic films. And that's okay. I mean, the 90s was what, 20 years ago, 30 years ago? So it's all right. Whatever you deem a classic in your mind, that's a classic. Whatever I deem a classic in my mind, to me, that's a classic. There should be no boundaries, really.
Yeah. All right, that's a good definition. It's wide open for. We've set ourselves up. We can talk about whatever we want to, which is pretty great.
Yeah, well, I think so.
Do you want to kick things off, or I think we're gonna talk about kind of what we've been watching and maybe reading too.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about the movies we've been watching first.
Okay.
And so I got this, and I know you want to talk about this. The Mae West in Hollywood. 1932 to 1943 box set by Indicator. Now, Indicator is a UK boutique Blu-ray label, and they often put out ginormous box sets like this. They also release individual films alone, so not in a box set. And I know that Kino Lorber actually released I'd say the majority of the same films that are on this box set as individual Blu-rays. And I think you're getting them ready now.
Did you see that production on the fly while you were talking? I was like, oh crap, because I forgot. Yeah, I think there's 9 of them that, fan them out.
Yeah, that looks so sweet.
Out to drop. To do that better.
So yeah, Kino Lorber and Indicator released her films, Mae West's films, very recently. I think the Indicator box set came out at the beginning of December, I want to say. And I think Kino had a similar release date for theirs. So I know, Heath, you're going to talk about the Kino ones and the Indicator box set. Now, I will say this is region locked. So if you are not in the UK, you will need a region-free player to view these discs. These discs are not going to play on just a regular North American manufactured player. So this is region B, and this set was relegated to 6,000 copies. So it's a limited edition set. If you want to purchase it, you can do that through the Indicator website. But basically what this set encompasses is all of Mae West's films that she produced in Hollywood between the years 1932 and 1943. So I have not had time to go through all of these films, and I don't know if it'll focus, but those are all the films there. I've watched about half of this box set, and the neat thing that you get with the Indicator releases is they always put giant booklets in their box sets. And a good friend of mine, Aaron Pinn, he always refers to Indicator box sets as film school in a box. And he's absolutely right. So this is the booklet here. It is beautiful. This is not like a cheaply produced booklet. This is over 80 pages long. And what it has inside is an essay about Mae West and different articles from the period in which her films were made. So you're going to find reprints of fan magazine articles in here from the early to mid 1930s, as well as excerpts from Mae West's autobiography Goodness Had Nothing to Do with It. That came out in 1959. So this booklet is jam packed. I mean, look how thick that is. Come on.
That's a thick book.
And I'm going to be completely honest with you. The reason why I purchased this particular box set is because I was never a fan of Mae West's growing up. So you guys are probably thinking, well, if you never liked her, why did you buy this? I bought it because I had hoped it would make me do a 180 or a 360 and make me think of her differently than what I had thought of her in the past. In the past, whenever I would sit down to watch one of her films, I always found her rather abrasive, very campy, very hammy. But as I've been going through this particular box set, reading the booklet and watching the special features, it's almost like a revelation. Like I'm starting to discover now more about her personality, more about her work ethic, and how reluctant she was to settle for anything less than perfect. And I totally respect that, because as a woman in that era, you didn't really have that much power, especially in Hollywood. The Hollywood studios were run by men and men only. There were very few women who had any power or say so in that era in filmmaking. So Mae West, she was a freaking legend now. Like I've watched, my favorite film that I've seen from this box set so far is Night After Night. And I believe Kino also released that one. So Night After Night, yeah. So this was Mae West's first on-screen appearance at Paramount Pictures. And this film was released in 1932 and it stars George Raft. She only has 2 or 3 scenes in this whole film. So not a lot of screen time, but my God, does this woman shine. Like she runs away with the whole movie. And it's been said that George Raft, when he was being interviewed for this particular film, he said that Mae West steals everything but the cameras. And he's absolutely right. And you know what? He didn't mean that in a mean way at all. He was one of the people that she worked with that totally had 100% respect for her. He admired the way she worked, how she was always prepared, how she would always show up on time, how she rewrote some of her character's dialogue so that it would capture audiences' attention more. She was just a legend. And I freaking love her now. I can't believe that prior to this box set, I never admired her.
Well, she's a divisive personality, I guess, right? Because she is brash. I mean, all the things that you said, that's true. She can overpower the screen. She's it is camp. And she became, like in the 60s and stuff, she became this camp icon as the times changed and she continued to be, But the interesting thing about it is that she did always do things on her own terms. She was a maverick way before. I was thinking of Top Gun music now. Like she was a maverick. She was like a really strong, like a lot of the stuff that she was see, I haven't read the book yet and I'm not fresh on some of this stuff, but my memory is that she had written a lot of her shtick for the stage. And it was hers. Like she worked it out in front of live audiences every night. And then she brought that to the screen.
Exactly right. Yeah. So Mae West started off on Broadway and she wrote the majority of the material that she appeared in. And she did the same in Hollywood. When they hired her in Hollywood and she went there, she was giving these scripts that had basically no life in them. And the parts that she was given were just, standard female roles. But she said, you know what, this is not for me. I'll give you the money that you've paid me to be here and I'll go back to New York and continue on the stage because this is not the material for me. So, I mean, kudos to her for wanting to give whatever money she was paid back because she recognized this is not for me. If you guys are not going to let me have the ability to create these roles for myself and write them the way they should be written, then I don't want to do it. Mm-hmm. And ultimately the studios caved and they let her have her way on screen. And she, at one time, she was the highest paid woman in the country. I think there was only one other person that was paid more than her, and that was William Randolph Hearst, who ran the publishing company. So she, you know what? She was what she was. She knew what she was doing, and she stuck up for herself. And I really admire her for that, especially considering this is in the early 1930s and during the Great Depression.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well said. Very well said.
So,
well, I want to talk. Can I throw one in there while we're kind of, this is your recommendation. I bought myself the Forbidden Hollywood Volume 2 set, and I watched 3 on a Match. You want to talk about 3 on a Match real quick?
Yes.
I hated it. No, just kidding.
Stop. I will come through this screen and strangle you if you say you've hated this movie.
Hey, no, it was great. It's we got and Dvorak, Betty Davis, and Joan Blondell. And having never seen it before, I thought Joan Blondell was going to be the bad one, the one that goes bad, but no. It's a crazy, it's like fine for a while. It's like, oh yeah, there's like some trouble. Oh, what's going on with that kid? I hope they don't do anything with that kid. They do. And then it's just like the last 20 minutes or so, it just becomes this like, whoo, it's like cautionary tale, but full pre-code exploitation era where they're like, you know what? I mean, I don't want to spoil the movie for anybody, but it escalates rather quickly. And they pack in a lot of stuff. I gather like she was on coke, right? Because they make like these references. Yeah.
Yeah, there's that famous GIF or GIF, however you want to say it, of Bogart doing this with his nose on Twitter. So yeah, that was in essence their way of saying that she was a cocaine addict. So yes, and you're absolutely right. That I would say the first half of the film is, I don't want to say it's boring, but it's building to something.
Yeah.
Okay, so the action does not start from the get-go. It builds and it builds and it builds, and it gives you some background information on these characters. And then the second half, it's rapid. Like everything just happens all at once, and it all goes downhill from there. And that's what, in my opinion, a good pre-code is all about. Something that grabs you, shakes you, and just makes you do this by the end of the film. Yeah. Like, what did I just watch? Yeah. Fantastic.
I like that censoring there. I lost your audio for a second. You went away for a second. Where should we go from here? I'm trying to, like, I'm looking at my, I know. Let's hang out in the pre-code era just a little bit longer.
Please.
And this is not technically pre-code because these are British films, but I just reviewed 2 early Hitchcock movies. I reviewed Rich and Strange and Number 17, which are also out from Kino. I'm going to be talking a lot about discs because that's the world that I live in, and I get so many review materials, right? And I am reviewing them. So these are fresh for me because I just watched them. But it's so interesting to see Hitchcock doing finding his way, right? He was young. I think he'd been directing for maybe 6 years when he did Rich and Strange, and he'd had some bigger successes, but he's still figuring it out. And he's still, like, Number 17 is basically work for hire. He was basically assigned the movie to, it was a play. It was Number 17 was a book, and then it was a play, and then it was adapted for the screen. And there's only so much you can do with that, but it's Hitchcock, and he's got, he's trying all these different techniques. And Rich and Strange is like, someone was like, hey, Hitchcock, you can direct one movie, just one. And he's like, all right, well, I'm going to have to put everything that I can into it. So it's like, it starts off really funny, and it's like, or, it's kind of a screwball comedy sort of a thing. It's this couple goes on this cruise. They come into some money, they go on this cruise. And then it becomes this like relationship story, and then there's infidelity, and there's nudity in it, and it's not an American movie; it's a British movie, so it's wilder than even I think what we were getting in America at the time. But it's just really interesting to see. Like, I don't even know. I don't know if I like it. I don't know if it works, but that's not even the point almost. At some point, I think we've talked about this before, whether something succeeds or not is almost less interesting to me now than just seeing how they did it. Like seeing how Hitchcock, like, well, what did he do with it? Did it work? How did he internalize that and take that with him? So, interestingly enough, on both of these discs in the mid 60s, I think 1966, Hitchcock sat down with Francois Truffaut and did a series, like an audio sort of a thing. And they talk about these movies, and he's so full of humor and self-deprecation. And he talks about like learning from these movies, not to take jobs that you don't believe in, or not to take, he said, with number 17 specifically, he said, if you can't see the framework of the story, like you can see the structure of a building, like the frame of a building, then don't do it, because you need to have an idea of what the story needs and where it needs to go. And I thought that was very interesting. You have to make the mistakes before you can, I don't even know that they're mistakes, but he viewed them as he seemed regretful about them. And the fact that he got something for those experiences, that's where we learn through failure, right? We learn through not succeeding. So I enjoyed both of these. I'm glad they're on, they come from new 4K restoration. I don't know if they're new, but they're 4K restorations from the BFI, and they look great.
Yeah, I think they are. I think they are brand new restorations. I could be wrong, but I don't think those films have ever had a Blu-ray release, or if they have, they were maybe included as special features on other film discs.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's great to see them because, like you said, it shows. So Hitchcock started off directing film in the 1920s in Britain. And when the majority of film audiences know Hitchcock as a legendary horror director, and rightly so. But it's interesting when you go back to his early years in the UK and you see his progression, how he started, what he was experimenting with, the camera angles he seemingly pulled out of nowhere because no one else was doing that stuff at the time. And then to see what he went on to do in Hollywood is just incredible. And I know some people may not think Hitchcock was the best human being. And again, rightly so. There's a lot of speculation on how he treated his leading ladies. But as a film director and as a storyteller, he was one of the best. Yeah. I have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not a Hitchcock scholar, but I'm slowly going through his work, and it's interesting to see the he is known. I think most modern movie fans, current movie fans, know Psycho, hopefully, or they will. They know Psycho, maybe they know like North by Northwest, Vertigo, stuff like that. But then like the British stuff almost feels like a different person. It's not. The Hitchcock fingerprints are there. You can see it happening. You can see it forming. But it's interesting that they're two completely different things. And in the special features, they've got some very high conversation criticism about the movies. And they were kind of talking about how the French audience champions that early stuff way more than the big commercial movies. And I'm like, well, that makes sense. Because that's the stuff where he was making mistakes and where he was learning. And that's the stuff that feels more human and less produced. So.
Yes, very well said. It almost shows his early releases show the man behind the camera more so than his releases from the 50s, 60s, 70s. And I don't know if you've ever seen it, but one of his films that he did in Britain called The Lodger, it's a silent film. I think off the top of my head, I think it was released in 26. That is my favorite Hitchcock film. And most people are like, oh my God, it's not Psycho or something more well-known. But yeah, The Lodger, you could see the beginnings of his fascination with horror in that particular film. When I watched that film for the first time, it felt to me as if I was watching Dracula or Nosferatu in the way that he lit the supposed villain.
Yeah.
And just the suspense that built throughout that whole film. It is incredible. So I urge people, if you consider yourself to be a Hitchcock fan or admirer, please don't pass off his earlier silent works, because they are so well worth watching.
You've just reminded me of something that I wanted to talk to you about. And this is kind of a change of subject, but it feels like an organic place to go. So it's the holidays. We're recording this. I'm going to tip it for everybody. We're recording this over the holidays. And I just saw this story on one of the morning news shows about It's a Wonderful Life. And they were talking to this, maybe I'll cut all this out, but we're going to have this conversation anyway, because I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. But I was like, what? They talked to this millennial who runs a channel, and it's like Millennial Movies or something like that, Millennial Movie Night or something like that. And she was watching It's a Wonderful Life through, like, it was so ironic. She was like, I mean, the idea was like, all right, movie, let's see if you hold up, which I already had a problem with, because that's not how we're supposed to watch movies. You don't watch movies on your terms. You don't go, all right, come to me and show me if you can hold up. No, it's your job to go to the movie. That bothers me. Anyway, so she was like, let's see if this holds up. She was like, I don't know, you guys. I mean, this thing is in black and white, so it's real old. So we have people who are in their 30s who think that a black and white movie is off the table. The conclusion was it had nice things in it for an old movie, right? That's kind of the conclusion. And it drove me crazy, because I'm like, that's not even that, like, that's an older movie, but it's not like, you're talking about a 20s movie. You're talking about a silent movie. If people aren't willing to give It's a Wonderful Life a shot, how are they ever going to give a silent Hitchcock movie a shot? Do you have thoughts?
I have many thoughts, and I'm glad you brought this up. Okay. So I agree with you in that I don't think that's the way you're supposed to approach watching classic film. However, I myself am considered a millennial. I'm 39 years old. I'm right on the cusp. I get it. I understand why people are opposed to watching black and white movies, because I hear it all the time from my family members, from close friends of mine who are not movie lovers like I am. Okay. They'll go watch a superhero movie, but they're not going to sit there for 2 hours and watch an old movie. Right.
Yeah.
But the key is, if you would like someone that you know to consider watching an old movie, maybe frame it differently. Tell them, I understand your reluctance to watch this film, but consider it as a piece of film history. Without the films that came before, you would not have what you have today. Without people like Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin, you would not have the special effects that you now see in Marvel and DC movies and The Matrix and all of that. You wouldn't. Buster Keaton was doing special effects on his own, live in front of the camera, without any editing whatsoever. So if you frame it like that, if you make it sound interesting, and it's not even like you have to try really hard to make these things sound interesting, because they are. It's a piece of history. I think if you frame it that way, people will be more willing to spend their time watching these films. And I'll give you an example. So I was at my sister's house with my brother-in-law, my two nephews, and my parents. We were all sitting in front of the TV after dinner, and The General happened to be on TCM, starring Buster Keaton. It's a silent film, but my God, is it a fantastic film to watch, especially as a group. So my family is like, oh my God, we don't want to watch this. It's got no talking. It's in black and white. Who cares? It's going to be so boring. Do you know, I turned it on. Not a word was uttered for those, I forget how many minutes it is, 90 minutes, 80 minutes, not a word.
Wow.
Everyone in that room sat, they watched the film. When it was over, they're like, holy cow, that was good. How did he do that? And I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. That's the reaction that you want. And you know what? You could be reluctant to watch a movie, but once you're sitting down and you're watching it happen, you're going to be hooked. 9 times out of 10, you are going to be hooked.
Well said. Well said. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back after this. This is a great time to cut to a commercial break. That's well said. You know, I was watching a 2013 interview with Jack White from the White Stripes, and he was talking about how his daughter at the time, I think she was 6 at the time, had gotten really into Chaplin. And I could kind of relate to that too, because we started I don't know if these show up on the camera or not, but okay. So we bought these Chaplin sets when my daughter was really little, and we would do like a Chaplin night, and she loved it. And most of those are silent, and it doesn't matter because comedy, I don't know. I feel like we've built so much armor or baggage or whatever. We come into these things with such expectations. If you can just sit down, as you say, if you just sit down, just turn it on. Hey, maybe you don't like it. Maybe you watch it and you don't like it. That's fine. But what if you do, and you've seen something that's classic, you've enhanced, you've broadened your horizons, you've opened up your scope. I think that's one of our goals here. We didn't even talk about this, but I think that's one of our goals, is to kind of turn people onto our passion for some of the stuff that we want to talk about. So well said. Well said. What else do you have that you want to talk about?
I also watched, speaking of silent movies, I watched a film called The Patsy from 1928. So this is towards the end of the silent film era. And it stars Canadian-born legend Marie Dressler and Marion Davies. And it was delightful. Oh my goodness. So the story behind The Patsy is that Marion Davies, she is so charming. If you have never seen a Marion Davies film, please check her out. She is charm personified in front of the camera. So she was the mistress of William Randolph Hearst. And he wanted her to only appear in serious period dramas. He didn't want her doing comedy because for some reason in the 20s and early 30s, comedy was almost frowned upon. Like, you're a lady, you shouldn't be throwing yourself around like Harold Lloyd and Keaton. You shouldn't be doing that. You should appear ladylike and refined on the screen. So in order to satisfy him, she did do some serious dramas, but The Patsy is a comedy, and goodness gracious, she just had such a natural talent for comedy that I can't believe that Hearst never saw that in her and never believed her a true comedian, because she's magic on screen. So that was one of the highlights, I would say, of my entire year, is The Patsy. Wonderful film. So if you can catch it on places like TCM, or you can even try finding it on YouTube, because I believe it may be part of the public domain now. If you can catch it, it's well worth watching. It's fantastic.
Okay. I haven't seen it, so I don't have TCM. And when you talk about TCM, I get so jealous. I miss it. I miss it so much, but it's not worth, like, it would be the only channel we would have a cable package for. So like, we're going to pay $100 and something for one channel. Can't do it. But I miss the curation, and I miss the way that, because you don't always want to sit down. Like, I got a stack here, right? You don't always want to sit down and like, okay, what do I go through the stack? What do I pick? Sometimes you just want to turn on the channel and like, look, this is coming on next.
Yeah.
I missed that.
Well, it is available on DVD through Warner Archive.
Yeah.
It does not have a Blu-ray release yet, but it is available on DVD. So if you don't have TCM, don't worry, you could still watch it.
Yeah. I'm going to talk about one that blew me away because I know we don't want to go too long on this, but I got to talk about China with Alan Ladd. Loretta Young gets top billing. Alan Ladd. Have you seen this movie? I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but
no worries. I have not seen it, but Alan Ladd, great actor.
Dude, this movie is such a template for Indiana Jones. Like, it's 1943. It's during the war. I wrote a review for this. So Also, the Hitchcock movies, guys, CerealAtMidnite.com. You can find reviews for a lot of the stuff that I talk about because I do review it. If people that watch this, they go, "You're more than a YouTube channel." Yes, the YouTube channel is an extension of the website. Actually, the website predates the YouTube channel. I was watching. So his name is Mr. Jones. He's got the fedora, leather jacket, khakis. He doesn't have a bullwhip, but I mean, everything else is like clearly they were inspired. Now, Indiana Jones was inspired by a lot of things, but clearly Alan Ladd in this movie, also Charlton Heston in The Naked Jungle as well, but which we're about to get on Blu-ray from Imprint. But I'm watching this movie and it's just so it's 43. And it gets away with things that you never would expect during a Code era movie. So it's super, super violent. Like, and it's because there was a war, like they were in the middle of World War II. And like by this point, so the director, I talk about this in my review. So John Farrow, Canadian, he's joined the Canadian Navy. He's gone to the front lines. He's served, and then he comes back. He gets, I think he gets typhus, if I remember correctly. So he gets discharged. He comes back, picks up. He had been making like screwball comedies and stuff in the 30s, goes to war, comes back, and he brings that experience with him to the screen. And so this is it's fairly jingoistic and kind of pro World War II, but like, you know why you can't put one over on us? Because we're America, bud. It's that kind of a thing, but that comes later. It's kind of an evolution. But they get away with so much violence. Like there's a scene, there's like a whole like truck, like a troop transport truck with like all these people in it. This guy throws a grenade at the truck and then the truck blows up, bodies go everywhere. It's like, holy crap. There's a scene where Alan Ladd, they rape this woman. It is very clear that she's being raped. It's like just off screen. It's like, whoa, he comes in. I hope I'm not spoiling too much, but it's like, I think these things would make people want to see it. Alan Ladd comes in. He's kind of detached. He's the cool guy. He's doing like petroleum. He's running petroleum in China for profit. He's just a profiteer. So he's getting invested in the cause, right? So he comes in, this woman's being raped, and these Japanese soldiers come out of this room and he's like, get against the wall. And so they line up against the wall. He's just like, like, whoa, it's like St. Valentine's Day Massacre in this movie. But it was so like that spirit of adventure and heroism and like consequence. I don't even know how to say it, but this must have been a profound influence on George Lucas and Steven Spielberg when they were creating the Indiana Jones character. And as I'm watching this, I'm like, this is all of the things that I love about Indiana Jones, but 40 years earlier. And so if people haven't seen this movie, I think this comes out in January 2022 from Kino Lorber. It's one of those deep catalog titles that they put out that people are like, I don't know that one. I've never heard of that one. And it blew me away. William Bendix is in it.
I love him.
I know you do. Toast to Bendix. Highly recommended. Of all the stuff that I've talked about here, I think that's the one that would be the most crowd pleasing. So if you're curious about it, check it out.
That sounds like a prime example of an American propaganda, World War II era propaganda film, where even though it was made during the time of the production code being heavily enforced, propaganda films that came out of Hollywood during the Second World War, they almost got like a free pass in terms of violence, as long as it made America look good and the enemies look like shit. Can I say shit?
Sure. Well, you just did. No, you can't.
As long as it stuck to those very clear lines and established the allies from the villains, films were allowed to be released under the code. So, yeah, I mean, you said that there was rape, there was heavy casualties in terms of violence and fighting, and then the Japanese. So I think this is a perfect example of a film that got a free pass in terms of the production code.
They kill a baby. They kill a baby in this movie.
The Japanese do?
Yeah.
Yeah, you see? Yeah. So as long as the villain is clearly identified and the Americans are made to look like the saviors, then it was allowed to pass. Yeah. Because I mean, 1943, I think the states had just entered the war or were about to enter the war. So Hollywood was probably trying to attract as much enlistees as possible at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2 years after Pearl Harbor, and they were definitely in full. It's not a recruitment movie, but it is definitely a we can do anything movie. But it has a sense. It's not. I want to make. It's not a war movie. There are no American troops in this movie. This is it's an adventure movie set against the backdrop of a war that's about to break out.
Okay.
And boy, is it good. It's a lot of it doesn't sound like it's fun. It's really fun. Like when it was over, I wanted to immediately start it again, which that's high praise.
Well, as soon as you mention William Bendix and when he's paired with Alan Ladd on screen, the two of them together, fantastic stuff. So you immediately caught my attention when you mentioned Bendix.
Nice.
Yeah.
What do you want to talk about next?
Okay, I have one more film, and I know you're going to love this one. Ooh. So again, guys, going back to the beginning of our video here, when we said no matter what decade the film was produced, it can be considered a classic depending on who you talk to. So this film came out in 2001, ladies and gentlemen, and it's called That Thing You Do, which I know is a favorite of Heath's, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? That Thing You Do, the Tom Hanks movie?
Yes, sir.
That's not 2001.
Isn't it? Yeah, it's 2001. Hang on, guys. We're going to check. Hang on.
96.
No.
I saw it in theaters as a teenager.
Are you looking it up?
Yeah, it's 1996.
Get out. Yeah, why does okay, I have it on digital and in iTunes it says 2001. Okay, so 96, right? 96?
96. And I can cut it if you want to just cut, I can cut that out and you can be like, it's a 1990s.
No, it's okay.
I can even tell you it was I'm looking for the actual release date. I saw this in theaters when it was brand new and it was an amazing experience. And I didn't realize I was watching October 4th, 1996.
Oh my God, that's so weird because, okay, if you purchase this film on iTunes, it says 2001.
Wow.
Okay, anyway, That Thing You Do. Yes, the Tom Hanks film. I watched this a couple of weeks ago and I was having a really bad day. I wanted to watch something that I knew would make me happy, make me smile. And this is the perfect film. I've always loved this movie. It's a joy to watch. And it holds up.
It does.
Honestly, it holds up really well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I heard Tom Hanks on an interview. He's promoting that thing he's got on, I think it's Apple TV. And he was doing the press rounds. He was talking to somebody and they asked him what is his favorite thing that he's done. And he said it was That Thing You Do. And I was like, yeah. Everything came together. And it's interesting if you've ever read the screenplay for that movie, like it's good, but what happened, like what ended up on screen is not necessarily in the screenplay. It's a combination of the actors and the music, and there's a tone. It's like that perfect lightning in a bottle. For me, it is a perfect movie. I know people debate, like, do perfect movies exist? I think it's totally subjective, right? But for me, that is a perfect movie because everything hits exactly. Steve Zahn is amazing in the movie.
He's a standout. He is the standout.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Have you ever seen the director's cut of that movie or just the theatrical cut?
Well, I don't know. Hang on. Let me see.
Okay.
Let me see in my iTunes which cut it is.
There's maybe a 15-minute difference. It's a substantial difference. And as someone who likes, like, oh, I like this thing, so I want more of this thing. But the director's cut is not as good as the theatrical cut. The theatrical cut is just what it needs to be. And then it's over. Okay.
So the one I have, and again, it says drama 2001, 1 hour, 48 minutes long. So is that the theatrical release or is that the director's cut? I don't know.
That's the theatrical cut. that is my preferred cut. Yes.
Okay. So what's what's the director's cut? What additional material is in that one?
It's more relationship stuff, if I remember correctly. It's more, I think there's more stuff with the dentist, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
It's just fleshing some stuff out, and it's nice, but it's not essential. And it slows, it does. I think it pushes it over 2 hours, if I remember correctly, too.
Okay.
Which is that's long for that movie. I think again, we watched the theatrical cut in August again, and it is just so much fun.
Yeah, it
just
is.
burns up the screen.
Well, that's why I turned to that film on that particular day, that I just felt like crap. I needed a pick me up, and that's, like you said, it's the perfect film. Yeah.
It'll always do it for you. It's never going to let you down. It's the definite. Some people watch horror for comfort. That's my comfort, watching something like that thing you do, because it's retro, right? Because I love the 60s, and it's
Me too.
It's Tom Hanks, it's Steve Zahn, even the Guy Patterson part. That's right, Tom Everett Scott. He's just so like relatable and likable, and like an everyman, but he's sympathetic, and like the whole, like, he's like, I am Spot. He's talking to her on the phone. He's like, I am Spot. And she hangs up, and he's just like, oh, okay. He's so sympathetic, and you just like, you're like, yeah. And then, so now I'm just talking about the movie. I was like, oh, do you remember the part where at the end he's playing with Dell and he's on the drum?
Yeah.
He's like, your band is falling apart, guy. Yeah,
it's magic.
Great. It needs a. What does it look like on? What does that iTunes copy look like? Because the Blu-ray, not so good.
Hang on, let me see. I don't think it's 4K. I think it's just HD.
It's probably the same transfer.
It's just HD. To me, it looks great. Okay. I mean, it doesn't look super duper sharp.
Yeah.
But it looks the way I remember it looking when I saw this as a teenager. So it's fine for me. It doesn't have to be like every single pixel has to be smooth, and there can't be any pops or, oh, please.
We were talking about that before we hit record, and I guess we can revisit it here while we are recording. But there's this whole movement right now of breaking everything down to its technical, like, what's the bit rate, what are the gamma levels, what's the number, and people are not talking about, like, I say it's the forest for the trees. Like, we're missing the thing that we should be talking about, which is the movie itself. And there's entire YouTube channels that have sprung up, and they're only talking about gamma levels and the black levels and stuff like this. I'm like, do you have nothing to say about the movie? And I saw someone say, well, I wouldn't want to tell someone what to think about this movie. I would like them to experience it for themselves. I'm like, well, but if you've given them no reason to go watch it, if all you've talked about is the technical presentation. So by that note, some CGI blockbuster spectacle may have great technical merits, but is someone going to go watch the silent Hitchcocks? If, it's swung so much, the pendulum has swung so much, and it's happened recently too. I feel like this happened kind of quickly, this rise of the tech. I'm a techie person, right? I love 4K, and I didn't always love 4K, but I've really come to embrace 4K. But I would never put the specs over the movie, the conversation about the specs over the conversation about the movie.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think the one thing that we all need to keep in mind is that the purpose of a film, and this dates back to the late 1800s when film first started coming out. The purpose of a film is to act as an escape for the audience, to act as a fantasy to the audience. And I think we've lost that. When people start talking about technical specs, and if there are any, if there's any grain in the new restorations and 4K releases,
that's me.
Guys, you're losing the purpose of what film is supposed to be. It's supposed to be an escape from real life. It's supposed to be a fantasy. When everything looks perfect, it's no longer a fantasy anymore. So you're losing that. You're losing the magic of the film. if you're going to go do a deep dive into all the technical specs and, oh, look, there's some grain in this lower right hand corner, that's not why you should be watching a film. If you do watch it for those reasons, that's up to you. But don't impose that view on everyone else and say you should stay away from this release because it looks like crap. No, it looks the way it's intended to look. And if a film is 80 to 90 years old, it's going to have some grain in it. It's going to have some dust. It's going to have particles and rips and tears in the film reel. That's what it is. It's a fantasy. It's an escape. So don't impose reality on it. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, we'll be right back. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Yes. Well said. It's a fantasy.
Yeah.
We do want to see this is a whole other conversation. We don't have time. We can't do this, but we want the best. We're living in an era where, Hitchcock movies are getting 4K transfers and they're getting all this restoration love. And that's great. That's exciting. I think we should talk about it. I think we should champion it. Be like, you guys, they made Hitchcock, like they've taken decades off of this Hitchcock movie, because a lot of the stuff, falls in the public domain. You get the third generation dupes that aired on TV. We're being able to come to these things in presentations that are better than they've ever been before. And I think that's to be championed. But when that becomes the focus and not the movie, we have put the cart before the horse.
Yes.
And I'm seeing a lot of carts before the horse. Talk about the movie first. So yes, well said. Yes, I agree. I feel like that's a good place to leave it. I have like 15 movies here and I talked about like 4 of them, but we'll leave them wanting more, including me. I want more, but we'll leave it.
Me too.
So tell people where they can keep up with all of your classic movie opinions. Where are you found at?
You can find me on Twitter. My handle is @Vanessa Buttino, and please look me up on there. Let's talk about film. Let's talk about music. Talk about anything, really.
Excellent. I'll put links in the description of this video. And this is just the beginning. This is an ongoing series, and I am really excited about what the future holds as we move forward with this.
Yeah, me too. We always have great conversations.
We do. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of this. This was like 50% your baby. So it's exciting. Guys, we want to know what you think about this stuff. So continue the conversation in the comments below. Let us know what you're watching. Let's do some film recommendations. Let's do, again, just seriously, let's continue these conversations and recommend things to other people so they can find all the wonderful things that are out there. There's a whole world of movies that is just the surface has just barely been scratched here on YouTube and even in podcasts. There's so much to talk about. So let's talk about it. Vanessa, thank you. Guys, thank you. Take care. Until next time, we will catch you later.
Bye.